All right. If you have a comment or question, you can raise your hand. If you're on live stream, you can type it in, and Robert will go ahead and read that over the microphone. We do want to ask that the comments and questions be limited to what was said today and not go off into other areas. If you have other things that you'd like to discuss, you certainly are welcome to email or call, and we'll try to address those things. Just be patient with the holy days in front of us. Unless it's urgent, it may not be gotten to until after the holy days. We just are overwhelmed getting ready for trumpets on Monday, atonement on the 12th, and then Sukkot. So we're very, very busy, as you can imagine. Rabbi Tom's going to go ahead and start us off.
Okay, thank you. Certainly one thing that occurred to me, and it's nothing new, but whether we take the book of Hebrews or Romans or Galatians or whatever book we take, especially Paul's writings, we have to learn to look at them through the light of the Torah. And if what we read doesn't seem to jive with the Torah, then there's something wrong with our interpretation of it.
Amen. Amen, agreed. Sadly, and we know this is true, but sadly, you've been taught generally, I mean, if you went to a different church, and maybe you didn't hear this, but generally speaking, all of you who went through some sort of mainstream Christian background were taught that everything filters through the new, okay? And even more so, filters through Paul. And that's just wrong. That's no insult to Paul. Paul would be offended, I think, if he knew that people were doing that. Everything filters through the Torah. And you see that consistently even with Paul. Paul is actually consistently saying things that match up perfectly with the Torah and understanding of the Torah. Unfortunately, he uses metaphors that we're guessing what he means by some of these metaphors, like when he says, those under the Torah, those not of the Torah, those circumcised, not circumcised. But you have to look at the way he's using it. What point is he trying to make? And that's how we can get clarity that he's actually using a metaphor. Because the point he's trying to make only works if he's using a metaphor. Otherwise, his point doesn't make any sense, even with what he had already said himself. Forget about even making sense with anything anybody else said. It doesn't even make sense in what he just said 2 seconds earlier, unless it's a metaphor. And so either Paul's completely schizophrenic, delusional, crazy, and just every other word and sentence is like not connected to something else, or maybe we just weren't understanding him, and he's being absolutely, totally consistent all the way through. Amen? Randy, go ahead.
I especially appreciate how you brought it to the culmination of Deuteronomy 31 through 11. That was such a rich message, and I love Torah. I love it that Yah has given me that, love for doing what he tells me to do. And I just want to make a point, though, about Deuteronomy 30. I see the covenant as being in the land that he promised, and I mean, you stated that scripture, and I don't know about the timing, what you believe on that. It was almost like you were just talking to me. I mean, I just love that verse. Of course, I love a lot of them, but Deuteronomy 30 is so meaningful to me, and I just want to thank you so much. Thank Yah. I mean, I just love it.
Amen. Thank you, Randy. And by the way, I love Deuteronomy 30 as well. As a matter of fact, we just covered it as part of the Torah portion. So, I mean, it really is one of my favorite sections. It's so heavy with profound, it's very real. I mean, Moses gets really real in chapter 30 there and just lays it out, including further on where he talks about it not being so hard that you got to fly up to the heavens to get the Torah, or that you have to go swim across the sea, but it's supposed to be near and in your heart. Now, we didn't go all the way to there because it was running out of time here, but I actually got everything done on my paper. This is like a first. I actually got everything done on my notes today. I was so proud of myself. Okay, thank you for letting me do that. So we got it all done. But yeah, that whole, everything in chapter 30, actually everything in the book of Deuteronomy just lays it out. I mean, if you'd read nothing else, you could understand almost everything you need to know just in that one book. Because he gives the full history in abbreviation, but he gives the full history, and then he lays out, what he expects of us. I mean, we read that today in 10:12, now Israel, what does Yahweh expect of us, Well, he expects us to get our hearts right. That's what he expects of us, all right? I mean, that's really the key, is that he expects us to get our hearts right. And that's what Paul, I think, is trying to talk to the group in Rome about. is that their hearts weren't right in the way they looked at each other and the way they treated each other about, And that's, by the way, what's going on in Acts 15. We didn't get to put that on the teaching recording, but in Acts 15, it's the same thing. The Jewish community was like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't just bring all these Gentiles into the synagogue. And so to make that more difficult and challenging, they said they need to get circumcised first. And James said, no, they don't. Because circumcision is a covenanting decision. What they should be treated as is ger or gerim, sojourners or proselytes. Let them come and hear Moses preached on every Shabbat when they come to the synagogue. And then eventually they'll make that decision. And when they decide to covenant, sure, then they'll get circumcised. But we can't make them get circumcised before they know what they're signing. It's like Congress. What are they? This is like, I guess some of those guys in Acts were related to Nancy Pelosi. They wanted them to sign, they wanted them to circumcise without reading the covenant. You can't read it till we pass it. Okay? I mean, just think of that as a modern day version of the thing. Okay? They're asking those people in the book of Acts to go ahead and commit and circumcise, having not actually understood what the contract is all about. And James simply said, no, 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 no. Let's require some basic things for table fellowship, and also basic things that would keep them from going to the pagan temple, because after all, we told them to stay away from things, from whoring, from things strangled, from drinking the blood, and from idolatry. Those 4 things you would do going into a pagan temple. There was the prostitute, the pagan prostitute of the temple. Then they would strangle an animal, they would drink its blood, and then there was an idol to be worshipped. So basically, he was preventing them from going to both the synagogue and the temple at the same time, the pagan temple. He said, if you're going to come to the synagogue, good. You want to go to the pagan temple, good. You can't do both. So he gave them things that would prevent them from going and doing both at the same time. Without telling them, if you want to come here, you have to stop going there. He just made it impossible for them to go there. Isn't that brilliant? Okay? So that's for all your friends who think, well, we only have to do 4 things. No, that was the starting point. It was a beginning.
I'm just going to read this the way Marvin wrote it. So it's not a changed thing, and what I mean is that the scripture didn't destroy the law for the Gentiles, but instead he was talking about the Yehudas, about them, right?
He was talking to both groups from their perspectives, although at this point he's mostly talking to, in Rome there was a large Jewish community. He's talking to mostly the Jewish community and how they were not understanding allowing these Gentiles to come in, and how he was not understanding that when they come in they're equal. Okay, there's no partiality here. And so he was addressing some of the hypocrisy in the existing Jewish community, and he was also approaching their superiority complex, that you have to say, look, it doesn't matter how you get here as long as you get here. And once you get here, you're equal. And by the way, we read that in Exodus chapter 12. They would be treated like a native. Okay, so that's why I wanted to read Exodus 12, so you would hear in verse 48, 49 in Exodus 12 that there was one law in verse 49 that they were equal, they were natives. Verse 48 and 49 say they're natives just like you were. There is no difference in Abba's eyes. Whatever you were in the past matters not. That's why the book of Ruth is so important, because you have a Moabitess who changes and is no longer a Moabitess. Otherwise, how could she be in Messiah's lineage? Because a Moabite would not be in that lineage. But she's no longer Moabite once she changes citizenship. Now she's Israelite. She's whatever Boaz was. And we know Boaz was of Yehuda. Okay? Because it goes down that line.
All right, from Linda Garena. As a Christian, it was always difficult to get past the scriptures you referenced in James, but the book of 1 John was impossible for her. So that was just a comment. Another comment from Keith Olar. The context of who Paul is speaking to is becoming clearer. For example, in 2:17 and 2:24, it was all hidden in plain sight.
Amen. Amen. And by the way, one of the things that will help us in our mindset is to stop being, or stop thinking and understanding that you're Christian. Okay? You're not Christian. Christians believe all of stuff that's under a label called Christianity. which has its set of beliefs, understandings, doctrines, etc. Okay? You were Christian, hopefully, and now you're becoming Israel. Israel has the same thing like Christianity. Israel has its own doctrines, beliefs, and understandings. So if you're going to continue to call yourself Christian and see yourself as Christian, you're going to be stuck in part of your mindset connected to that other system and mindset and approach and set of beliefs. Okay? And so that's part of the thing, is that we have to break free of that. Judah has the same problem. Judah is so focused on what's become known as being Jewish and Judaism that they don't see themselves just as Israel, and they've added their own bunch of stuff. Okay? Because they've taken it into its own separate realm of now having its, just like Christianity has its covering beliefs, foundations, understanding, so does Judaism. But it's not Judaism that's in this book. It's not Christianity that's in this book. It's Torah Observant Israel that's in this book. That's the way he describes it all the way through. So we need to figure out, how do we become that? Which is why we call our organization Messianic, Torah Observant Israel. Because that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be believers in Messiah who are Torah observant, and we're Israel.
A follow-up from Linda is, she has found the hard part of physical circumcision today is that there's no one who will do it without needing to go to a surgeon. Her son isn't able to find anyone willing or capable. Any guidance?
Okay, let me give guidance, because I probably should have said this on the teaching, but this is important. There are two main issues with circumcision today. One of them is the one that she brought up, which is it's really hard to find somebody or someplace to do it. All of the children out there that do get circumcised are still getting it done out of pediatrician offices, out of hospitals. Go to the pediatricians and find one, and you should be able to find one that'd be willing to do it as elective surgery, even if you're an adult. Okay? I mean, we could not find a quote-unquote a moel, which is in the Jewish community, the person who does circumcision. But when we were in Knoxville, we went to our pediatrician, and we said to the pediatrician, who do you have that does circumcision? They said so-and-so, and we said, fine, we want to do this on the 8th day, and we scheduled it, and we had it done for my son. So I would say go to your hospitals and pediatricians and find someone that does it on a regular basis, so you know that they're not like rusty at it. Okay, but somebody who's doing them, because somebody's doing them in every community, right? Every community's had, there are people getting circumcised, as a part of health reasons, this reasons, that, whatever. So there's got to be somebody that can do it. So that's issue number one. But then you have to deal with the costs and the fact that it's elective surgery and your insurance won't cover it and everything else, but it is what it is. Issue number two is there are those that should not get circumcised, and there are, in other words, there are men that because of their health or their age-related issues and their health, it would be actually dangerous to go under the knife. A lot of people, especially with blood pressure issues, would have to come off of their blood thinners in order to do it and other things like that. So if you are in a health condition where it would be medically, irresponsible to do it, call me for counsel, or whoever your congregational leader is to counsel. But I would counsel that, depending on your actual health condition, at this point, it's a sign of the covenant. It's not the covenant itself. That doesn't mean that if you can do it, you shouldn't do it. Of course, if you can do it, you should do it. But there are some people that just can't because they may not come out of it, or something else terrible might happen because of their health conditions. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have counseled a few people recently not to do it because of their advanced years and health conditions. Because believe it or not, I've got people calling me in their 80s wanting to do this because they just want to please their Father in heaven. And I appreciate that. And we have people that we know that have done it in their 60s and 70s. And that's wonderful. But there are other people that call up and say, am I in big trouble if I don't? Because I'm afraid if I do, I'm going to really have a problem. And I say, no. Okay? Abba understands that you missed that window. That doesn't mean that you missed the covenant window. You just missed the window to do that piece of it. Remember we talked about there's some pieces of Torah that you can't do anymore? Well, guess what? You get old enough with enough health problems, you can't get circumcised. Okay, it's just an adverse condition. But don't make that decision yourself. Counsel about it. Okay?
Christian Wybe said circumcision shows the covenanting of the parents, not the child, right? the child couldn't make that choice.
Right. When we circumcise our child on the 8th day, we are making a commitment to raise them in Torah. That's a commitment of the parents to raise them. What Paul's addressing is the fact that he was dealing with a lot of people that they either weren't raised right or didn't take. In other words, they were circumcised on the 8th day, which is that you were born of the circumcision. In other words, yours was done on the 8th day. You got all these people coming in. They're all older than that. They weren't circumcised on the 8th day. But yet you, notwithstanding your circumcision, are breaking the commandments. So your circumcision might as well be uncircumcision, is what he's saying, because it hasn't done any good for you. And it may not be your fault. It may have been your parents' fault for not raising you right. But now that you're an adult, you're responsible for yourself, so you need to make it right. That's called teshuvah, that's called repentance, and you make it right.
I guess in response to you saying if you're too old, you missed that piece, Gina wants to know, could they still eat Passover?
Yeah, no, if you are covenanted, again, you got to go through leadership just to get counsel, but yes, you can still partake of the Passover. If you are no longer able to do it because of age or health, Abba understands. Okay? Remember what this is all about. Shh, shh, shh. I know the children are coming in. Remember, everyone, and I'm talking to the live stream to make sure. Remember, it's about Deuteronomy 8:2. It's not doing everything correctly and perfectly. It's about wanting to and making the effort. He's testing you to see whether it's in your heart. Remember, this whole teaching was about the heart. Whether it's in your heart to keep the commands. So if it's in your heart to do it, that's enough, even if you can't. But you must make the effort if you can. Does that make sense? Okay, that's the clarity we're looking for. Anything, we want to be maximalist. If there's anything you can do, it is up to you. You're obligated to make the effort. However, I'm pointing out that there are some things that just can't be done, and so that doesn't mean that you're not covenanted. You just can't do it.